Recall expands to include 7 million pounds of deli
Nearly
meat.
150 sick in salmonella outbreak affecting 11
E. coli
countries.
outbreak in the U.S. kills 10 and sickens hundreds.
All these headlines about food safety. This isn't just policy, it's personal. Behind every recall, every outbreak, and every regulation, there's someone whose life was permanently changed or lost. I know that because I am one of them.
Welcome to Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. I'm Gennette Zimmer.
And I'm Dr. Darin Detwiler, former submarine guy, longtime food safety advocate, author, and someone who's been speaking up for over 3.5 decades, even when it wasn't easy or popular.
This isn't your average food safety podcast. We're not talking about bacteria and best practices. We won't be teaching you the proper temperature to cook a chicken breast.
165.
Or even how to pronounce Listeria monocytogenes.
Not even close.
We're diving into the culture, the conflicts, and the human cost of getting it wrong.
We'll share stories, some painful, some funny, all true. Revealing the real experiences of someone who's spent a lifetime behind the scenes.
These aren't stories you read about in newspapers or magazines, and they're not found on conference agendas. What they are everyday experiences of people who have dedicated their lives to making sure you have access to safe food.
Because when it comes to protecting every plate, it's not just policy and data. It's personal. And it's time we start talking about it like it is.
Welcome back, everyone, to Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. I'm so excited that we're now on our 4th episode, and we've been having a lot of fun with this and really getting great feedback as well, which I absolutely appreciate. Anybody who's been messaging you and letting you know what they think of it or what their favorite parts about it are. And this has been a really, really fun journey. So thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, it is really cool to see how other people are reposting and sharing with their network and bringing about awareness of our podcast. And it's kind of cool because awareness is one of our big 4As, right? We have awareness,
right?
Allies, being one and supporting allies. We have advocacy. And probably one of the things that's always been difficult for us to kind of differentiate is activism.
Advocacy to activism, yes. And it is subtly different. There is a difference between the two.
Oh, sure. So many times I've talked with families and those people who are asking, how can they be an ally? How can they be an advocate? Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't do that. Okay, but there's other ways of being an advocate. You don't have to be the activist.
Right.
And it's not like it's like first you're this and then you're this and then you're this.
Right.
I kind of look at it as sometimes you're over here, sometimes you're over there on this spectrum, if you will, of awareness to activism.
Yes. And especially because we've talked about this because this is something you struggle with a lot, which is you cannot be everything to everybody. And it's part of how the 4As even got developed was, we like to take long drives. And when we take long drives, we love to sort of talk out our different ideas and the things that are important to us. And you were talking about somebody approaching you about a pretty serious food safety issue within a very specific group of people.
Yeah, it was a niche that was really kind of on my I wouldn't say fringe, but It was definitely far from the center of what I focus on.
Right.
And I was really feeling kind of conflicted, almost guilty in that I didn't want to jump in feet first, and really dive in as much as I've dove into other issues with this issue, because I just didn't feel like it was my niche and it was my place to be that kind of a voice.
Right. So being the advocate or even an activist in this case also just didn't really seem appropriate, but being an ally and just having your awareness. Those are important. I know that our listeners, you've heard us say these 4 terms over and over again, but we really feel like the differentiation is incredibly important for everybody to kind of get an idea of what is this all about and where is my place in each one of those.
Well, and they don't always even look the same.
No.
Sometimes you can do any one of those 4, even all of them at the same time, on stage, in front of an audience, active or whatever. And sometimes you're not on stage. Sometimes you are behind the scenes.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into what this episode is really focused on, which is going behind the scenes.
Yeah, and we're talking about the idea of focusing on food, but far earlier in its journey to our table.
Yeah. Talking about behind the scenes, this kind of reminds me of, for anybody who's grew up in Southern California or has taken that big trip to Disneyland back in the 80s, Darin and he was in band, I was in drill team, and we actually got to go see behind the scenes at Disneyland, walk behind the walls that most people don't ever get to experience, because seeing kind of the man behind the curtain, it takes away a little bit of the magic of the illusion of Disneyland, but it was still kind of fun to be able to go do that.
I don't think it ruined the magic too much.
Sure.
It was a, it was like a brief exposure to the hidden corridors and the tunnels and behind the scenes.
Right.
But still, it was really cool. Here's what's crazy. I don't even remember the music we were playing, but I remember going behind the scenes. And how
I know,
it was
is
like,
that funny?
Do you remember any of the music?
No, I don't. Well, but I never really paid attention. I just marched to the beat.
True, but you would think that, you must remember the songs or whatever. No, I remember the sights and things.
Yeah.
Plus, it was also going with not your parents.
Yeah.
Right? We were
No,
going with our
we were
classmates.
just going with our classmates and stuff. But we are digressing a little bit from from the point of this, right? It's not just about the
I forgot we're supposed to be all like talking about
food
food
safety
and
and food stuff
Yes.
and whatever. But no, it's a little bit more than just seeing the man behind the curtain.
or like learning, quote unquote, how the sausage is made.
Exactly. So we're going to be talking about a recent behind the scenes experience that we had. But before we do that, I have a little surprise for you.
What?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, this is not what the script says here.
It's kind of a special. it's kind of a special, something a little bit different for our listeners that, hopefully you all will be entertained. I'm not going to spoil it.
What have you done here? Where are we going with this?
I'm not going to spoil it, but I do kind of hope that you, as well as our listeners, really enjoy this.
All right, well, how about this? Before we get to your surprise,
Okay.
why don't we get some of the business out of the way?
Okay.
National Food Safety Education Month is near its end.
Yep.
And if you have been following my LinkedIn page, we've been posting a video each and every day.
Yep.
And it's been a really interesting experience to see people talking about it and sharing it, bringing new awareness to these things. And if you missed one or all of them and you want to watch any of them again, you want to share them again, we're going to post a link to these videos on our website in this podcast episode's description.
Yep. And seriously, if you have the opportunity to go through, because a lot of these videos were created for Darin's students, but they're a perfect learning opportunity for anybody who's interested in these topics. It's really, really interesting stuff. But don't forget to tell them also about the articles.
Oh, yeah. So back on September 18th was the first installment of my serial story, Silent Enemies, in New Food Magazine. And it is a 5-part story. There's going to be a new part every week on Thursdays. And I kind of go back and forth between my experiences working as a nuclear engineer in a reactor on a submarine and how there's a lot of lessons and a lot of experiences that are weirdly reflected with my experience in food safety. And it's crazy to me how it took me almost 3 decades after I left the submarine service to see some of the parallels. And now I'm talking about it. I'm really excited about that. And the other article I want to talk about is actually 3 articles in Food Safety News.
Because you can't just write a one part. No. You write so much, you have to break it up into parts.
Yeah. And then, who wants to do part 1, part 2, part 3 in the same thing? And it's amazing how many times editors go, why don't we just put a part every single day or a different part every day kind of thing?
Yep.
So in Food Safety News, September 22, 23, and 24, I wrote about the 10-year anniversary of the sentencing of the Peanut Corporation of America from the incident with the salmonella contaminated peanuts. And so I write about, what happened and that got us to the point where we had the outbreak and the recall. I write about the sentencing, the convictions, the sentencing, and the outcome. And then I do a little bit more than just talking about the impact of this. I invited some other people to share their perspective on it. And I include some other perspectives in this 3-part series for Food Safety News.
Very cool. And again, we'll post the links for all of those in the description of this episode.
Yes, we will. Is there any other business we need to get out of the way here?
No, I think we hit it all.
All right.
So, Darin.
Okay, I'm almost nervous about what's going to happen next year.
It's time for our special guest.
Okay, a special guest. And I'm supposed to know this person?
I mean, you know of this person.
Is it the woman who called me out on LinkedIn for naming her in a recent episode as the quote unquote food safety expert with chickens? She knows who she is.
No, it's not her. It's not her. No. Today's guest is a food safety a-hole that until recently you had not heard of.
Okay.
But in her time, she was one of the A's we talk about in Pep Nexus. She was a hardcore activist.
Not just a food safety a-hole?
No, she was the major activist of her time, a formidable woman who went undercover. She brought some of the major issues of how poorly food was handled in England during the early 1900s, and she wrote about it in a book. So our guest is none other than...
Who is it? Who is it?
My name is Olive Christian Malvery, and I am one of the OG food safety a-holes.
We are very excited to have this very special guest on our podcast, and I'm so pleased she was willing to join us from 1907 to talk about her undercover experience.
This is so cool. Okay, this... I'm connecting some dots here. So Gennette and I learned about her when we were doing research at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. I, for one, was surprised. I had not even heard of her work before then. But once I read about her, I was excited to realize that she had a profound impact on the awareness of British citizens regarding the conditions of the manufacturing processes and practices of their food.
Yeah. I mean, I remember how excited we both were because I was like, have you ever heard of this woman? And you had not heard of her before. And it was like really cool. So she was an undercover journalist, social reformer from 1904 to 1914. She was very much along the lines of our Nellie Bly, the Pennsylvanian who was a pioneer investigative journalist. In fact, she basically created investigative journalism back in the late 1800s.
Yeah, I remember teaching about Nellie Bly when I was a history teacher back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and welcome her in, our guest, Olive Christian Malvery.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am also known as Mrs. Archibald McCurdy, but I do prefer to go by my birth name and nom de plume, as it were, Olive Christian Malvery. Archibald, my esteemed husband, thinks what I do is not befitting the wife of a diplomat and often wishes I would stay at home with the children. But he accepts that I must use my privilege to bring about positive change in our country.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. What made you want to embark on this journey into the behind the scenes of the food industry?
I must admit, as a young child, I was cursed with a vulgar curiosity. I wanted to find out things for myself. Later in life, this inspired me to venture out from my home, strike out across the fields, throw aside my identity, and obtain a job. But not just any job. This was inspired by the work of a gentleman who worked undercover himself and has stirred up so much in America. What was his name? Oh, yes. Downton Sinclair.
You mean Upton Sinclair?
Oh, yes. Upton Sinclair.
I know him. He's a friend from work. He published the book The Jungle in 1906. I think, the year before your book, The Soul of Market, was published in England.
Exactly. My society friends who read The Jungle would say these food crimes are only committed by the wicked American Beef Trust. And I thought, is that true? So I decided to see for myself.
So that's when you went undercover yourself. You wrote about what you saw and called it The British Jungle, What I Saw of the Preserved Food Trade in your book.
You know, when I first conceived the idea of enlisting myself in the great army of daily workers in the factories, I did not intend taking part in any reforms other than those which concerned the workers. I am a great ally to the workers' plight, you know.
I know. You've done quite a bit of work on their behalf, even more so for the plight of women and girls of your time.
Well, I am a woman, and a woman of means, so it seems only fair to look out for others of my fair sex.
Well, I, for one, thank you.
You're welcome, dear. It must not be understood that the places I worked are typical of all factories. I have not been in all of them, but they are certainly typical of a large number.
Oh, understood. Can you tell us what you discovered?
Well, first, I observed, through no fault of their own, just the fault of circumstances, the state of the other workers at the fruit factory to which I obtained temporary employment. They were all desperately dirty and absolutely unfit to touch food that was meant for human consumption. One woman had some nasty skin disease. What it was, I'm not able to say. I saw that there was no place in this factory where workers could wash their hands, nor were there sanitary arrangements of any description. One could also see that the fruit itself was often in such a state of decay, bruised, crushed down, and frequently with growth of a greeny white mildew on top and between each layer.
And did this seem typical of this factory?
Oh, yes. And yet, I am reminded of an article I read where several hundredweight of fruit designed for a factory was seized by the inspector. A case was made and the manager appeared in court, dreadfully distressed, of course, that such a thing should have taken place. He declared that it was entirely an accident and that on arrival at the factory, the fruit, when discovered to be in a bad state, would inevitably have been destroyed. My experience in the employment of one such factory shows this to be a complete fabrication.
As we mentioned before, the title to the chapter in your book we're talking about is The British Jungle. Had you also been inside a meat factory?
I had for a time worked in a butcher shop in order to learn something of the methods of trade exchange in this country. While my motivation was always ascertaining the working conditions for women and girls and not to investigate the food trade, I heard from those around me the stories of the processes by which the meat was acquired. If the butchered meat was of good quality, it would be labeled at-home killed meat. But the farmers' worst specimens were killed and offered for public sale as foreign meat. By the way, were you aware that at this time 42% of meat imported into this country was contributed by America?
I was aware of this and of the problems with canned American meat found even as far away as parts of Africa. So do you think this was a way to shift blame while profiting off of diseased or deleterious meat?
Absolutely. The quote-unquote foreign meat was often local sheep or cattle that were tuberculous or some other disease. They would be disposed at the cheaper price, but still sent out for public consumption.
Through Sinclair's 1906 book, American readers have been exposed to the descriptions of horrible conditions in the meat plants at that time. What were some of the conditions that you saw and shared?
I'm reminded of one time back in the day when I worked in a meatpacking factory. 4 enormous wooden cases arrived containing tongues and sheep's hearts. They were mildewed over and smelled so fearfully that the odor made one physically sick. And yet, every scrap of that diseased offal was used in the preparation of potted tongues and savories of different kinds. During the process of preservation, we had to season the meat very profusely and use various dyes in order to bring the pulped meat to a proper appearance.
Well, that's just disgusting. And that was what you could actually see. You know, a lot of our modern concerns, they all tend to be invisible.
Oh my, that sounds dreadful.
There's so much to unpack here, but tell me, what is a key message you wish readers would take from your work?
As for myself, with my intimate knowledge of some of these factories, I would inquire very particularly as to the brand of preserved food I am invited to consume, and would need an assurance that the factory where it was manufactured was open to any of the public who cared to visit it.
Wow, that's transparency. Inviting the public to visit and view their production practices might calm consumers' fears of looking into the mouth of the lion before purchasing their product. Given what was recently learned about certain premium deli meats, I would absolutely inquire as to their origin rather than put my head into the mouth of the boar.
I venture to say in my time, an exceedingly small percentage of manufacturers of foodstuff in this country would dare to invite unexpected or frequent inspection of their premises, employees, and materials by the public or government officials.
Well, that's definitely where things have changed these days. I mean, not only do we have laws that require governmental inspections, but, you know, Darin and I are frequently invited to go behind the scenes and experience places where they take food safety very seriously.
Well, that is heartening, my dear, because you can be sure that even wealth does not protect people from dirty and disgustingly manufactured stuff sent out from these places, for their sale is not confined to the very poorest classes.
Clearly, everyone needs to eat, and no matter your status, we are all potential victims to these food safety failures. Olive Christian Malvery, thank you so very much for coming on our show and telling us about the conditions of these factories in your day. The work we're talking about is the chapter called The British Jungle, What I Saw of the Preserved Food Trade, from your book, The Soul Market, published in 1907. We'll post a link to purchase your book in the episode description for anyone else who wishes to learn more about this topic or any of the other topics you write about in your book.
Thank you so much for promoting my work. It was a pleasure speaking with you both.
The content from this interview were excerpts taken directly from the chapter The British Jungle, What I Saw of the Preserved Food Trade, from her book The Soul Market, published in 1907. Olive Christian Malvery was born in British-occupied India in 1871 and died at age 43 in 1914. In the 10 years she was active as a pioneering undercover journalist and social reformer, she published 7 books and had a weekly magazine called McCurdy's Weekly. Her husband, Archibald McCurdy, was a Scottish-born U.S. diplomat. They had 3 children together. And from what I've read about her, she was clearly a passionate activist and advocate for social justice and just someone to admire.
That was a really cool surprise, Gennette.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it.
You know,
I hope the listeners don't think it's too silly.
well, I think it's an eye-opener to realize that, you know, so much focus is put on certain primary documents or artifacts, and to realize that there was this The British Jungle by this other investigative journalist about the same period of time as Upton Sinclair. And here's this woman who used her place in society to really kind of write about things that would capture the reader's attention and kind of be a conflict with their awareness and conscious about the world around them, and kind of bring about some sympathy that wasn't there in terms of the plight of these specific people.
Well, and also what I really appreciated about her was she clearly was someone who wanted to challenge assumptions of people that were in her class of society about people who were in lower classes of society, for example, or even people that were not from England. You know, this whole idea that her friends would be like, well, that's just Americans, you know, and it's, well, actually, we're not doing so great here. And she pointed it out. I mean, she definitely was an OG food safety a-hole.
Well, you know, for the vast majority of people who their exposure to the food industry is what they get at a restaurant or at a grocery store.
Yep.
To learn more about the perspectives of the farmer or even the farm worker can be rather eye-opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and flip the page of this menu, as it were.
Oh, good pun. Good pun.
And let's talk a little bit about a recent experience we had earlier this month.
Yeah. You know, there are times where I get invited to do a webinar or a podcast, and it's just from my office.
Right.
It's just over Zoom or whatever, some platform, right? Or I get invited to do a very industry polished and published type of a conference kind of a thing. But there are times where we get to go behind the scenes. Do you remember when we went that one food production company in Northern California, and we got to go see how the food was made?
Yeah.
And another Northern California adventure, seeing how sprouts, how modern sprouts are made.
Yeah.
And there's been other examples where we've got to kind of go behind the scenes and watch food safety being practiced, and you get an eye opener. I mean, it's like, this is what it looks like. This is what they're doing. This is the culture, not just someone writing or speaking about the culture, but to see the culture with our own eyes.
See the culture in action.
Yes, in action. And sometimes it is there for us to give opinions. Sometimes it's there for us to have a conversation with their workforce. And sometimes it's just there to bring about our own awareness of what really is going on.
Yeah.
So we went up to the Salinas Valley.
Yep.
And the Salinas Valley it's a little south of the San Francisco area in California. It's mostly central, but it's very close to the coast. I'm reading a description here. The Salinas Valley is a fertile 90-mile agricultural region on California's central coast, known as the salad bowl of the world for its abundant produce like lettuce and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know how many people really realize this, but you know, there are 55 billion servings of leafy greens produced annually. That is a lot of lettuce.
Yeah. I mean, you even just the idea of how the number doesn't mean a lot until you go there and see what are these rows and how long are these rows and how wide are these rows and how many rows are there in one sector of a farm. So we were invited by the LGMA, the Leafy Green Marketing Agreement folks, to come and to see some of the behind the scenes. And we went up there, and I got to admit, the very first thing we did actually drive through some of these areas. But before we got started, we went to Cannery Row.
Well, okay. I wanted to say, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that we stopped at Cannery Row, but I want to kind of bring up the fact that, like, when we go on these long drives, whenever we go somewhere new, something that, you know, if you want to know a little bit about Darin and me, is we like to take random lefts and random rights down streets of cities that we don't know or towns that we don't know, because we like to see what are their houses like, what's the landscape like, just different things that, you know, if you're just driving down the main road, you're not going to see. And so what had happened was we were just kind of driving along, and there was this beautiful sculpture. And I was like, ooh, stop right here real quick. And I rolled down the window to take a picture of the beautiful sculpture.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden we hear this loud barking, that kind of thing. And it was loud. And I was like, okay, we found the Salinas sea lions, or the Monterey sea lions.
Yeah, there had to be easily 1,000 there.
Oh, yeah. There were so many of them. Like, we took so many videos. I don't know if it's possible to share a video on there, but maybe I'll throw a video up on YouTube and put a link there for everybody to see, because it was incredible. incredible.
But this was literally like the architectural ruins in the beginning of as we kept going now down this road.
Right.
And we're like, oh my God, it's Cannery Row.
Yeah. Had we not taken that random turd and stopped at that little sculpture that I thought was so pretty, we wouldn't have ended up at the top of Cannery Row. I'm not even sure that either of us were fully aware. It seems kind of dense of us at this point to not have realized that it was there.
When you don't have certain geographic... Remember when we went to Gatlinburg and we went through Pigeon Forge and we're driving through there and it's like, oh, here's where Dolly World is.
Yes, and we had no context. And then I was like, oh man, had I known, we would have gone early to just experience Dolly World, but we didn't get to that time. We will someday.
I'm so glad though that we had time to go see, what's there today of Cannery Road. I mean, again, going back to high school, right?
Yeah.
Reading of Mice and Men, the 1937 novel by John Steinbeck.
Yep.
And to see, okay, this is where this was taking place. And this was, some of those buildings have been repurposed and some of them are more like museum or just kept because of what they were. And there were signs and they had old, like the labels on packaging were banners on the street.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see that, again, this is part of our food industry and that even though the days of canning that were there are gone, we still have this remnant from the past. And it's so close to the Salinas Valley, so close to this part on the coast.
If you've never been like to Monterey or driven down Cannery Row or anything, they still have some of the buildings are still there, although they're repurposed for mostly retail.
I think there's some residential.
And some residential, reasons.
I got to wonder some of those apartments or condos or lofts in the old cannery buildings. It's like, my first thought would be, does it smell like the fish? Does it smell like fish? But
I would hope at this point that maybe it's all like dissipated.
One can only hope.
Yeah.
So we had this opportunity to first spend some time kind of going behind the scenes. We saw, what did we see? We saw spinach,
3 different farms.
Spinach.
Yeah. Spinach, broccoli. And it was
romaine.
No, it was the first farm was romaine, like romaine hearts. And so we got to see the romaine hearts being picked and packaged. And then we went to a broccoli farm, and we kind of got to see and have their water treatment facility explained to us and how they keep their water clean.
And we tasted, literally, they cut a piece of broccoli
right off the stalk.
And we ate it right then and there.
Yep.
And then, we saw the
spinach.
And their... What was it? At least $1 million just for the starting point of the equipment that this truck vehicle that was going, and we got to ride it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to brag too much.
It was an incredible piece of machinery.
The speed with which that was sorting through, and the optic scanners, and any kind of defects or anything on the spinach, and these little blue teeth-like, comb-like fingers that were sorting them as it was going onto a conveyor belt and going into these boxes that were like, what they said, like 400 some odd pounds of spinach per box.
I think that's what they were saying. Yeah.
And then later that day, we saw those same boxes going to this huge, like one of the biggest buildings, the biggest refrigerated produce buildings. And I don't know if it's America or the world, but it was huge.
Yeah.
And what they did with it and the processing steps there. What else did we see?
We also went to a composting facility.
Yeah, wasn't that crazy?
It was crazy. I have to say, the weirdest part to me was how fascinating I found just that whole process of, they would get food waste that would be composted, and it was like miles and miles of rows of like watching them flip it. They had a massive truck machine that would like literally flip it inside out so that it would like compost, and how to make sure that it was cleaned. Not only did they use machinery to clean it, but they actually used people to walk up and down aisles to make sure that there wasn't any plastic waste or metal or wooden pieces that didn't belong.
And if you remember, it wasn't just these trucks, which, by the way, we saw some of the weirdest, most unique trucks.
Oh, yeah. That was crazy.
I mean, how do you go, I want to drive that? Give me the keys. Do you go to a special school for these trucks, you know?
Yeah.
But there was the temperature monitoring equipment because they were going to, make sure that it got to a certain temperature inside in the composting and these long piles. So it would kill pathogens. But they were also worried about the birds.
Yes.
Do you remember what they were doing for the birds?
No.
There were these random sensors that would tell if birds were congregating on the piles. And it would send off not a horn, not a buzzer, but a little firework kind of thing. So you're every minute or two, you're walking around and someone's like, and here's where we do this. And all of a sudden...
And it was loud and startling.
The noisemaker kind of whistling firework kind of a deal, because it would make
the flock of birds flying up, and then they'd be like,
"Run away!"
Then they'd be like, "Okay, I think we'll settle here," and then
it would go off again. And of course, we're like, "What the heck is going on?" Yeah. And all the workers are like, this is normal. This is completely normal.
Yeah.
But again, behind the scenes in terms of that, I also was really impressed by what he was talking about in terms of the value statement. The idea of there could be someone who says, we don't need to buy this, processed compost, this landfill that we're going to use on the farms to do this work. And the guy who owns the company, as a family-owned company, starts talking about, okay, but what are you going to do next year or the year after you've degraded the soil conditions and now you have inferior product and now you're going to end up going into more expense and more work to make your ground fertile and able to bring about the harvest that you want to bring about.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting, just that whole experience over the course of 2 days, meeting these people who, food safety culture is kind of their life, because it truly is, because if they're not taking care of their product and showing a care for their product, then it will start to degrade and be devalued. And then you end up with, tainted food.
Well, and so many of the people we met, it wasn't just the individual, it was the family. The business had been in their family for a long time. The land had been in their family for generations. And so many of the people we interacted with talking in terms of using words that were indicative of they were caretakers of the land. They were thinking about the long-term impact of their actions on the land. If it wasn't something that was going to be immediate, they were thinking about the next quarter, the next year, even the next 5 to 10 years down the road in terms of the product. And they were talking about how, whether you're talking about the hills to the east or the underground water source or all these different variables, even at a genetic level, talking about how there's so much change that they have to accommodate for over time with different varieties of broccoli. You think there's only 1 or 2, and they're talking about dozens.
Yeah. And listeners, I have to say, you guys would have been very, very proud of me, because I had what I think was my first true food safety a-hole experience, where I actually spoke up when I saw something. And, I was actually not treated like an a-hole, which was helpful. But, when we were at the packing plant.
The one that was really, really cold and really, really loud because of all the trucks and the ventilation and the AC units.
Oh, yeah. It was so cold in there. And as we were walking in and walking by, there was a pallet. It wasn't the full pallet. It was probably like 3 or 4 boxes off of a pallet that had clearly toppled off to the side and landed on the ground. And these were heads of produce that were packaged in of themselves. So they had like a plastic packing around them, but they were also like on the ground, and I'm watching people picking them up and tossing them into the thing. And I turned to our guide and I was like, so what is going to happen to these products that are now on the ground? Are you guys just going to repackage them since they have the plastic around them? And the guy, he's like, nope, those are being set aside. And we watched them set them aside to be destroyed, that they would not be put into the marketplace.
Yeah, because they said that they had at the most, they try to have a 3-day turnaround to get food in and out
Yeah.
of that facility. And didn't the romaine lettuce, the head of operations there was telling us that would usually be to market within just a few weeks to the farthest market they would get into.
Right.
But there really was no time to go back to and try to isolate those things. Just take it out now. Isolate anything that was problematic
Right.
from the side. And it's almost like they put it over in a corner with caution tape
Yeah.
in a sector kind of an area. But
Yeah.
it was really impressive to see their response and see how in real time, there was no question they needed to do that. That was part of their procedures.
Right. And that it was part of their procedures, because it was not, we walked in on them collecting it and setting it aside. So it wasn't like there's people walking through, now we should do something. It definitely was something where, no, this is part of our procedure. And I appreciated that.
Well, and other procedures, I mean, we didn't just walk out into certain fields. We would glove up and
Yep.
hair nets and wash our hands and take protocols out there. And we were watching the workforce out there all, wearing protective sleeve covers and all the different things they were wearing and doing this work. Of course, again, some of them were on or around these $1 million pieces of equipment. And, you go thinking that it's all about speed. But a lot of the reason why some of these pieces of equipment were expensive is because they were doing the sorting right then and there.
Yes.
They weren't just picking and then taking it to another location and then sorting out.
Sorting or packaging.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, the romaine lettuce.
The romaine lettuce, they were packaging the 6 heads of romaine hearts all into the bag and then putting it in a box. So those were all like being picked and packaged at the same time. And that was really interesting.
Well, they even talked about how they would clean the equipment, how they had protective plastic sleeves on some of the equipment, on some of the surfaces that would be exposed there, and how they did that work. And it was just really impressive to be able to see this kind of, not only the protocols and the processes, but the scope and scale of these operations, and to talk about everything from GPS and how they monitor for rodent control and inspection. And what else is important to note, I think, is that we were also there with people from multiple agencies that all played a role in the auditing and the inspection and the validation that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was reminded of as we were interviewing Olive Christian Malvery earlier in this episode was when she said how she would need an assurance that the factory where it was manufactured was open to any of the public who cared to visit it. Now, I can't imagine that these farms are open to anybody in the public. These are humongous farms that produce a lot of food. But the fact that they are open to visitors that are coming with kind of an intent and a purpose of seeing the manufacturing process was still very interesting and really, really cool.
Well, and the fact that they took time out of their activities to talk us through things and to show us equipment and to emphasize certain things and to answer our questions.
Yeah, and they answered a lot of questions, which was also really cool. And I don't know, just the whole experience watching, there were some very passionate people, some very dedicated people who were working really, really hard. And I appreciated being invited to experience it from their perspective. And that was very cool.
Yeah. So, I guess a confession, if you will, is I have had times in my career where I had a significant learning moment, an opportunity to change my opinion about things, to learn more, and to realize that I need to be more specific rather than saying all sprouts are problematic, or rather than saying all areas are all. It's very easy to lump everything into the all. Mm-hmm. Right? And we as consumers sometimes do that. If there's one company or one product that from one company, from one manufacturer, one farm, one retailer that's problematic, sometimes people will avoid everything in that general category.
Yes.
And I, as being an ally to people who really are focusing on food safety and getting it right, I have to make sure that I am not being an advocate that is not fully aware.
Yeah.
And thus I'm actually not helping out those to whom I should be an ally.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to Confessions of a Food Safety A-Hole. Please like, comment, follow, and thank you so much to all of our new and returning listeners. We really appreciate you. So Darin, do you have any final words?
Yeah, I want to thank our listeners who sat right back and heard our tale of our food safety trip to learn from produce growers and their many partnerships. We headed north to Salinas, the World Salad Bowl, where leafy greens are safely grown before the food is sold.
Nice. That was a good one, babe. Gilligan's Island did it good too.
Oh, you caught me. You caught me. All right. Well, at least this wasn't us stranded for 15 years in Salinas.
That is true. Anyway, thank you all so much.
Thank you.